On this episode of the DRV Law Show, I talk with my wife, Charlotte Guernsey, about the red flags that she sees in the wedding industry as a co-owner of Lambs Hill Bridal Boutique and Lambs Hill Venue.
Welcome to the DRV Law Show with your host, divorce attorney Dennis Vetrano, talking divorce, relationships, and adding value to your life.
So what are some relationship red flags that you see when people are planning a wedding?
Well, I would say one of the first things I notice, like when I do the tours, if one of the people in the party is like really into it and the other one's totally checked out. Usually it's the woman who's like really into it. She's maybe done a lot of research. She's really excited about it. And like the guy or whoever else is just kind of following along. And then like asking a question that's really obvious, and she like looks at him and like duh. And then like, or when he finally does say something, it's sort of negative.
Right.
So clearly like one wants it and the other one's kind of just going along. And that's one kind of red flag that maybe they're not quite on the same.
And it's funny because I've seen those sorts of situations, and it's tough to distinguish between the guy that's just like, hey, I want you to take over, right? And the guy that's just like, I don't really want to be here.
Right.
I mean, so you have those specific little things, and I think they probably come down to body language as much as they come down to like things that they actually say or do during the tour.
Right. So you can tell if they're both excited about it, but if they're not both excited about it, that's definitely one red flag that we do see. And the venue tour is usually like the first of a lot of their wedding planning.
Yeah.
Process.
That's usually the first step for people who are planning a wedding.
Yeah. I had another time, this was at the bridal shop. This was an older bride coming in, buying a dress, went the whole process. She was so happy. She said yes to a dress, and we're about to, swipe the credit card. She's like, oh, wait a minute. I need to call my fiancé. So she calls her fiance. I'm going to, run this charge to the card. And he starts like, no, what? You're going to spend that much on a dress? Are you kidding me?
Wow.
And we were all just like cringing. And it was I was like embarrassed for her. And like the fact that you have to call someone to get money is foreign to me.
Yeah. Well, I think
like he had that much control over, he said, no, you're not buying that. And she basically left crying. Like, if this is someone you're about to marry, that's
well, there's a difference there. And here's the thing. I think it's so difficult to distinguish between control and someone who's really, care and concern, say. Because control is something, as soon as you see that right out of the gate, like holding the purse strings, like telling you where you can go, like telling you, well, that friend's a bad influence. You shouldn't be around that person. Like control is a big thing.
Right. So she definitely felt like she needed to get permission. And then he told her no. And I just don't think that's a good way to start a relationship, to not be on it. Not each individually have your own money.
Yeah.
Like, I have my own money, you have your own money.
Yeah.
If you really want something, you get it. You have a job, I understand that.
Yeah.
Like, if you want something, same way. If I wanted to go buy an expensive dress, I make my own money, so I'm going to do that. I shouldn't have to feel like I need to call you to get permission to buy something.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was watching a podcast the other day, actually, a Grant Cardone podcast, and it was actually his wife, I think, was doing the podcast. And they were talking about, like, giving up your dreams for your relationship. And she opined basically that like when you're getting into a relationship with someone, they're supposed to have dreams that they will not compromise on. They won't give up on. They won't give those dreams away for the relationship. And does it mean that they're not putting the relationship first as a primary focus? No. It just means that you have a principled individual that has their own goals and their own things that they want to chase. So they don't necessarily need to be at your beck and call, like, constantly everything about you or about the relationship. It can be something more than that, or should be something more than that. And she basically said, like, look, if Grant basically told me he was willing to give up his dreams for me, then he wasn't the guy that I really would want to be with. Right.
You should be supporting each other to do the best you can. So this particular instant definitely seems like she was being controlled. Which was uncomfortable and strange to me.
And that's always, and it's just to stay on this point for a little bit. I think that's, as a divorce attorney, that's one of the things that I see, that people are in those relationships and they know they're not right and they know they're failing and they know they want to be out of it, but they don't really see it for what it is. They're like, oh, he just loves me. Like, he just cares about, he's just worried about the finances. He's just he's just planning. He's just trying to provide for us. But being able to see that for what it is, right?
Right. Yeah, you're making excuses all along the way. And I see that with the planning because, like, one of them can't make a decision, whereas, like, one of them's like, no, we need to decide on this vendor, that vendor, and the other one's kind of dragging their feet. And it's, like, just not on the same page.
Yeah.
So I see that a lot. Not a lot, but that's one of the red flags definitely in the process of... Yeah.
So any other red flags you see in the industry?
We had a bride come in that was much younger than the fiancé. And again, also a little bit controlling. She did end up buying a dress and then calling and canceling it. Well, actually, no, he called and canceled the dress because he said she was cheating on him.
Wow.
So... they didn't seem to be the right pair from the beginning. Usually we don't have the guys in the bridal shop, but in this particular circumstance we did. So.
Yeah, I always wonder that, like, how frequently do guys get involved in, like, picking out the venue or picking out the bridal dress?
Right.
Because I feel like many times it's led by the bride, right?
Yes, almost always.
And I always wonder why that is. Like, I mean, look... clearly you're going to want to, if you're the bride, you're going to want to pick your own dress. Of course, I get it.
Right.
And that's a big deal for people, no?
Yeah. They've been thinking about this like their whole life.
Yeah.
But the venue should be something that's really captures both of your personalities.
Yeah.
And then I feel like the dress is more of her vision, but a lot of times the bride does talk about what she thinks he's going to want her to look like. Which is usually always, the guys always want something sexy.
Yeah, guilty.
But, sometimes they want something big and dramatic.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes they do both. Or they save part of the sexy for later.
So, okay. How many brides do you really see that have that dynamic? I mean, are you seeing like a trend of younger women just wanting older men, like say, millennials wanting to marry, say, Gen Xers? I mean, are you seeing that trend in the industry?
I think they want someone who's capable and is going to be a partner with them. So in that respects, we are. But to be honest, I think most of the couples that we see at our venue are pretty much well matched and similar age. It's not like but we don't do a huge volume at our venue, so maybe that's just very specific.
But do you see that age gap in the bridal dress shop or not as much?
Now and then, yes. Yeah.
Because I know a couple of the stylists were saying before, like, hey, we're seeing that now in the dating pool, that's a growing trend.
Yeah.
And I think the point of that is, at least my view of, as having worked with people who are splitting for 25 years, is like, look, ladies don't want a hanger-on. I mean, because the ladies that I work with, they're killing it. Like on average, they're making a ton of money. They're accomplished. Many times very educated. I mean, even the moms who are stay-at-home moms in those relationships still have a degree in psychology and a doctorate's degree, and they're used to be a CEO of a bank. Like, they're accomplished people, and I think they don't want what the vast majority of guys have become, like underachieving, not taking on that real masculine role and balancing it with respect and adulation and encouragement, and so like the support without the control. Right. I mean, I see that dynamic kind of being out there is like I can see that trend moving forward. Like, hey, you want somebody that has all of it.
Right. I mean, you don't want someone that you're ultimately not going to respect because they're just kind of on your coattails.
Right.
I mean, that's why I think you were perfect for me because
Yeah.
you were like a little seed about to go. So I think someone should like look for someone who can match their energy, you know, and grow with them.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important part.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it has to be a balance. Like I see, like I know, you know, years ago, like the mentality was like there were a lot of guys who were controlling and expected. They were going to control the purse strings. They were going to, you know, tell their wife where they could go, what they could do, who they could see, and they were paying all the bills. And the wife was a stay-at-home mom, and this is like say 30 years ago. And I think now what we have is guys who are like, you know, they're not providing for the family. They're not going after it. They're not, you know, chasing financial goals and dreams and doing everything they could, you know, with their kids and everything else. They're just kind of like mailing it in. And now the ladies are taking on it, say, a more traditional masculine role in that, like, they're killing it.
And that's definitely a red flag because, like, I was just talking to a vendor who felt like that was her, you know. Her fiance wasn't engaged and was just kind of going through the motions, and she was kind of leading the whole way, and she wishes she had noticed these as red flags back then. She probably, once you're married, you're kind of like into it where you feel like you need to try to make it work. You know? So kind of, I think, seeing this and during the wedding process, it can be very stressful. So I think that's a good test of your relationship to handle things. And you know, seeing that you guys can work together to get through kind of stressful things, understanding, you know, they can be very expensive. So deciding on a budget together and what's reasonable and who's going to pay what and how that's going to flesh out. I think these are all good things that are kind of test your relationship, and you should be aware of like, what are red flags? Is he kind of checked out and just kind of going through the motions? Or on the flip side, is he completely controlling and going to your makeup trial and telling the makeup artist how you should look? You know, there's a complete extreme where I've seen the guy completely over the top controlling, or the guy completely checked out. So if you got either of those extremes, that's a red flag to maybe like dial it back and see what's going on. I really look for someone that's going to match your energy.
And that's that's super, super important to say. And I find it's interesting how you have that insight right at the ground floor before people are getting married.
Right. I help them in love, and you help them when they're out of love.
All right. I know you love that. Cheeky. It's good. But yeah, I think it's important to find a balance.
Yes.
And I think because you have women doing it all more than they ever have in history, they're insisting on having it all. And having it all means finding someone who is a balance.
Well, it's important that you each have your own identity and own source of income. Like my sister went hunting by herself in Afghanistan. And I said to her husband, like, really, you're going to let Kate go do this? Like, seems kind of dangerous, like, right? He's like, what are you going to do with a woman with a job? And it's like the point.
And
like,
that was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but yeah.
Right. But the point is, like, if you have your own income, you don't need to ask permission. You should each have that, like, self-confidence that you're growing independently, but also together.
Yeah. And it's interesting how, like, and I feel like this is the way many, say, quote unquote, traditional men view it. They use the word let. How are you going to let your spouse?
Right.
Who the fuck are you to let anybody do anything? And I think Kate is a perfect example. She's going to go do her thing. Nobody's going to stop her from doing whatever the hell she wants to do, and won't be intimidated or scared of doing anything. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
And your spouse is supposed to encourage you.
Yes.
They're supposed to say, yeah, you want to do that? And maybe even just like, you know, with us, like I'll say like, hey, I'm concerned about X. Y makes me nervous, and just express their feelings. But again, be clear about it. You need to do what you want to do. It is not for me to approve or disapprove of anything you want to do. It is up to you. You're your own person. Right.
So if you're in a relationship where you feel like you have an allowance from someone, then you always have to ask. And that's the example of the older bride having to call to buy her dress. Then it was like she has to call a parent to get money, and they reprimand her, and it's not a good way to start a relationship with someone. It's
not a good look. And I find that dynamic is the one that I see fail most frequently.
Yes, right.
I know people will give me a lot of shit about this, and they're like, oh, well, it works for us. But yes,
Maybe.
if it works for you, great. But I'm always more of like, and there's a big movement now of like, hey, if you have a stay-at-home parent and you're considering your combined income, hours together that we've earned together as a collective familial unit, then I should have my own bank account that I can do with it as I please.
Right.
We should talk about what my domestic labor is worth.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you have control. You have autonomy. You have control of your own destiny, not the other person.
Yeah.
So I have to know. So you see these red flags, right?
Right.
And do you think they're seeing them while they're in it?
No, I'm thinking like they need your card. That's one thing I'm thinking.
No, right,
We've
right.
joked about that person needs to be slipped your card. We've had like a couple at their wedding at our venue where like she was just like resting bitch face all the time, to the point where the photographer had to keep asking her to smile. Like, and I felt bad for him, but like she was just so like bridezilla that we don't get that many of them, but that particular one I really felt bad for. But do I think they know it? I think that they just, like you said before, they're making excuses at that point. They were already so invested that they're at a point in the relationship where they're just excuses. He's just this, he's just that, and it'll be different, or he'll change, or he just loves me, or he just.
Right.
So I think if they did see it, they would get out of it, which is what I think, learning about these ahead of time, be like, all right, if he starts acting like this, maybe I should like take a step back and it's like have a straight up conversation with him. Like, hey, are you into this or not?
Yeah.
Or say, hey, I can't have you like controlling me.
Yeah.
So like, I'm going to be in charge of these things, my makeup, my dress, my this, my that, and you can decide on those things. Like, come up with a plan. At least. That's just straight up on how you're going to do it. Yep.
Just like you would do if you were a member of a team or an equal partner with someone else, right?
I mean, could you imagine going to a makeup trial with me and you telling the person how to do my makeup?
No.
That would never happen.
No, and I would feel self-conscious about doing that. It's like, even if I had an opinion, I'd be like, I wouldn't want to say anything because I want you to be happy with me.
Right. So. And that's how, like, your significant other should feel. Like, whatever you want. There have been couples that I've just, like, loved and feel like they're golden.
Meant to be together,
It's always, they're always so giving and generous and, like, whatever makes you happy. You love it. You look great. Like, that dress, I don't care what it costs. You look amazing.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it was worth it. Right. And I could just tell he whipped out the credit card and she went on her own, did something. I'm like, it's just a nice, totally different dynamic.
And you see that, and you feel that. I mean, I'm sure when you're in the shop and you're seeing that, like, every stylist, every person there sees that relationship. They feel it.
Yeah.
It exudes that level of, like, this is a one-of-a-kind connection, right?
Yeah.
It's undeniable for sure. So I have to know, in as many of those cases or situations where you see red flags, how many of those have resulted in them canceling the dress or canceling the venue or canceling the wedding? Say percentage-wise.
I would say if it's like super obvious red flag, like they've actually booked the venue, but one partner was completely checked out, I would say maybe like 40% of the time.
Really?
They've actually ended up canceling.
Wow.
And I can't say I was totally surprised.
And I'm surprised. That it's that high. I mean, I think coming from me, I will tell you there's no price tag you can put on, having a long-lasting relationship. That actually raises a good question. Like, if they decide to cancel, what happens with their deposit, their dress? Like, what do those things cost? Because I think listeners are out there like, I'm in it right now, and I know it's failing, but should I, what should I expect if I say, hey, I'm not going to sacrifice my future for this?
Well, most of these higher cost items will have contracts associated with them.
Yeah.
And as you know, as the attorney, it always comes down to what the contract says. So typically, if you've put down a deposit, either the vendor has held that date for you or we've ordered the dress or whatever it might be. So usually you do lose the deposit. but you don't have to pay the balance. But again, it'll depend.
Right.
But if it means like moving forward with something or not,
Yeah.
then that could be like a big life moment.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you could get them to actually like delay it. Like if you're like, you know what, we're gonna hit the pause button for a year. Like,
Yeah.
can I carry that deposit to next year? Like that's something worth asking.
Yeah.
So that can happen too.
Well, listen, like I said, the message to the listeners out there is if you see the red flags, there's no price tag you can put on the money you would lose or the money that's at stake or your sanity or a happy life for the next 10, 20, 30 years in terms of what you'd lose for planning the wedding. So if you see the red flags,
Right.
get out.
Right. Plus they don't have to get divorced then because they never got married.
So thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. I think you had a lot to offer in seeing what happens in the bridal industry and the red flags that you see at the outset and just, bringing those to the listeners' attention so they can just really, know it when they see it, right?
All right. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.